Hey, what are you doing? What are you up to? Welcome back. I see you. I've been waiting on you. Welcome back, Kingdom Builder. Welcome back, Road Tripper. Welcome back, Akeem, Akatim, brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, aunties and uncles, grandmas and grandpas. Welcome back, Road Trippers. Welcome back, everybody. Shalom, shalom. Welcome back to the road trip. It's good to have you here. It's great. All right? Shalom, shalom. Peace and blessings to you, your homes, your dwelling places, your loved ones, your children, and your pets. Right? Your little fur babies. That's correct. Welcome back. Hope you've been doing all right. Here we go. Monday, right? Start of the work week. How was your day? Was it all right? Hope so. Back into the swing of things. We had a nice, relaxing weekend. All right, we read a little bit of the Antiquities of the Yahudim over the weekend, didn't we? All the way up into chapter 18. Shalom, shalom, right? And all praises to the Most High for that. All praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, right? Glory to Yahweh Shai. Honors to the Ruach. And my love and my respect to you. That's correct. So we're going to read a little bit more tonight. Starting off at the Antiquities of the Yahudim, chapter 19, concerning Jacob's flight into Mesopotamia by reason of the fear he was in of his brother. All right, that's what we're going to be reading. If you have these scrolls, you can follow along with me. Ooh, this one's kind of long. Chapter 19 is a little bit long. That might be one by itself. All right, that's fine. Absolutely fine. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I love you all. You're more than just ladies and gentlemen. You are my friends and my mishpachah. You are my beloved brothers and sisters in one body of Mashiach. That's right. No further ado. All right. Chapter 19. Let's begin. Chapter 19, concerning Jacob's flight into Mesopotamia by reason of the fear he was in of his brother. Section 1, and it reads, Now Jacob, Yaakov, was sent by his mother to Mesopotamia in order to marry Laban, her brother's daughter, which marriage was permitted by Isaac on account of his deference to the desires of his wife. And he accordingly journeyed through the land of Canaan. And because he hated the people of that country, he would not lodge with any of them, but took up his lodging in the open air and laid his head on a heap of stones that he had gathered together. At which time he saw in his sleep such a vision standing by him. He seemed to see a ladder that reached from the earth unto heaven, and persons descending upon the ladder, and seemed more excellent than human. And at last Yahweh himself stood upon it, and was plainly visible to him, who calling him by his name, spoke to him in these words. That's the end of section 1. Oh, cliffhanger. I don't like when they leave it off like that, right? All right, let's get ready to get some more. Oh, boy. Section 2. And what did Yahweh say? He said, Oh, Yaakov, oh, Jacob. It is not fit for you, who are the son of a good father and grandson of one who had obtained a great reputation for his eminent virtue, Salake, to be dejected at your present circumstances, but to hope for better times. For you shall have great abundance of all things, of all good things by my assistance. For I brought Abraham here out of Mesopotamia, when he was driven away by his kinsmen, and I made your father a happy man. Nor will I bestow a lesser degree of happiness on yourself. Be of good courage, therefore, and under my conduct proceed on this your journey, for the marriage you go so zealously about shall be consummated. And you shall have children of good characters, but their multitude shall be innumerable, and they shall leave what they have to a still more numerous posterity, to whom and to whose posterity I give the domination or the dominion of all the land, and their posterity shall fill the entire earth and sea, so far as the sun beholds them. But do not you fear any danger, nor be afraid of the many labors you must undergo. For by my providence I will direct you what you are to do in the time present, Salake, and still much more in the time to come. That's the end of section 2. Oh boy, let's get some more. Yeah, section 3. Such were the predictions which Yahweh made to Yaakov, whereupon he made very joyful at what he had seen and heard. And he poured oil on the stones, because on them the prediction of such great benefits was made. He also vowed a vow, and he would offer sacrifices upon them, if he lived and returned safely. And if he came again in such condition, he would give the tithe of what he had gotten to Yahweh. He also judged the place to be honorable and gave it the name of Bethel, which in the Greek is interpreted the house of Yahweh. That's the end of section 3. Hallelujah, Selah. Section 4. So he proceeded on his journey to Mesopotamia, and at length came to Haran, and meeting with shepherds in the suburbs, with boys grown up and maidens sitting about a certain well, he stayed with them, and wanting water to drink, and beginning to discourse with them, he asked them whether they knew such as one as Laban, and whether he was still alive. Now they all said they knew him, for he was not so inconsiderable a person as to be unknown to any of them, and that his daughter fed their father's flocks together with them, and that indeed they wondered that she was not yet come. For by her means you might learn more exactly whatever you desire to know about that family. While they were saying this, the damsel came, and the other shepherds that came down along with her. Then they showed her Yaakov, Jacob, and told her that he was a stranger who came to inquire about her father's affairs. But she, as pleased after a custom of children with Yaakov, Jacob's coming, asked him who he was. And thus he came to them. And thus he came to them. And what it was he lacked that he came there. She also wished it might he in their power to supply the wants he came about. That's the end of section 4. Let's continue though. Section 5. But Yaakov, Jacob, was quite overcome, not so much by their family, nor by the affection which might arise from there, as by his love to the damsel, and his surprise at her beauty, which was so flourishing as few of the women of that age could vie with. He said then, there is a relation between you and me, elder than either you or my birth, if you be the daughter of Laban, for Abraham was the son of Terah, as well as Haran and Nahor, of the last of whom Nahor, Bethuel, your grandfather, was the son. Isaac, my father, was the son of Abraham and of Sarah, right, who was the daughter of Haran. But there is a nearer and later cement of mutual family which we bear to one another. For my mother Rebekah was sister to Laban, your father, both by the same father and mother. I therefore and you are first cousins, and I am now come to salute you, and to renew that affinity which is proper between us. Upon this the damsel, at the mention of Rebekah, as usually happens to young persons, wept that out of the kindness she had for her father, and embraced Jacob, Yaakov, she having learned an account of Rebekah from her father, and knew that her parents loved to hear her named. And when she had saluted him, she said that he brought the most desirable and greatest pleasures to her father, with all their family, who was always mentioning his mother, and always thinking of her, and her alone, and that this will make you equal in his eyes to any advantageous circumstances whatsoever, right? Then she directed him to go to her father and follow her while she conducted to him. and did not deprive him of such a pleasure by staying any longer away from him. That's the end of section 5. All right. Section 6. When she had said thus, she brought him to Laban, and being accepted by his uncle, he was secure himself, as being among his friends, and he brought a great deal of pleasure to them by his unexpected coming. But a little while after, Laban told him that he could not express in words the joy he had at his coming. But still he inquired of him the occasion of his coming, and while he left his aged mother and father when they wanted to be taken care of by him, and that he would afford him all the assistance he wanted. Then Jacob, Yaakov, gave him an account of the whole occasion of his journey, and told him that Isaac had 2 sons that were twins himself, and Esau, who, because he failed of his father's prayers, which by his mother's wisdom were put up for him, sought to kill him, as deprived of the kingdom, which was to be given him of Yahweh, and of the blessings for which their father prayed, and that this was the occasion of his coming here, as his mother had commanded him to do. For we are all, says he, brothers, one to another, but our mothers esteem an alliance with your family more than she does one with the families of the country. So I look upon yourself and Yahweh to be the supporters of my travels, and think myself safe in my present circumstances. That's the end of section 6. All right, I'm trying to warm up a little bit here. All right? Section 7. Now Laban promised to treat him with great humility and great humanity, both on account of his ancestors and particularly for the sake of his mother, towards whom he said he would show his kindness even though she were absent, by taking care of him, for he assured him he would make him the head shepherd of his flock, and give him authority sufficient for that purpose. And when he should have a mind to return to his parents, he would send him back with presents, and this in as honorable a manner as the nearest of their relation should require. This Jacob heard gladly, and said he would willingly and with pleasure undergo any sort of pains while he waited with him, but desired Rachel to wife, as the reward of those pains, who was not only on other accounts esteemed by him, but also because she was the means of his coming to him. For he said he was forced by the love of the damsel to make this proposal. Laban was well pleased with this agreement, and consented to give the damsel to him, as not desirous to meet with any better son-in-law, and said he would do this if he would stay with him some time, for he was not willing to send his daughter to among the Canaanites, for he repented of the alliance he had made already by marrying his sister there. When Jacob, Yaakov, had given his consent to this, he agreed to stay 7 years, for so many years he had resolved to serve his father-in-law, that having given a specimen of this virtue and of his virtue, it might be better known what sort of man he was. And Yaakov, or Jacob, accepted of his terms. After that time was over, he made the wedding feast. And when it was night, without Jacob's perceiving it, he put his other daughter into bed to him, who was both elder to Rachel, and of no comely countenance. Jacob lay with her that night, and being both in drink and in the dark, however, oh man, you hear that? We're going to read that again, but let's continue. However, when it was day, he knew what had been done to him, and he reproached Laban for his unfair proceeding with him, who asked pardon for that necessity which forced him to do what he did, for he did not give him Leah out of any ill design, but as overcome by another greater necessity, that notwithstanding this, nothing should hinder him from marrying Rachel, but that when he had served another 7 years, he would give her whom he loved. Jacob submitted to this condition, For his love to the damsel did not permit him to do otherwise. And when another 7 years were gone, he took Rachel to wife. And that was it. But you see how dirty that was. And in other texts, we also read and we also can understand and perceive that the other guests of the party that night, they knew what was going on. They knew what Laban was doing. But no one spoke a word. So it's like mass deception, man. It was all that's what you call a conspiracy. That's a conspiracy. A conspiracy was set against Jacob, but it was all for the Most High's will. So can you say that conspiracies are wicked and evil? Because if Leah had never wifed to Jacob and he only had Rachel alone, then what would have happened to the first four or five tribes? The first four tribes, Salake. And the fourth being Judah, that's you. We would have been missing out on Reuben, Simeon, right? Judah. We would have been missing out on a lot of the first tribes without Leah. Because remember, Rachel didn't birth until a while afterwards, man. Leah birthed first. Let's continue. Let's get some more of this. But you got to see, everything's in the Most High's will, even though it was a conspiracy against Jacob. Yes, you can actually say that. Is that blasphemy? No. Because it says in other texts that we've already read. We've already read it. It says that those at the party, they knew the intentions. They knew that it was a swap out. Because there was even a saying that happened out. But Jacob didn't perceive it. And that was the Most High's will. Right? So 7 years compounded with another 7 years was the will of the Most High. All right, let's get some more of this. Hallelujah. Selah. Section 8. Now each of these had handmaids by their father's donation. Zilpah was handmaid to Leah, and Bilhah to Rachel. By no means slaves, but however subject to their mistresses. Now Leah was sorely troubled at her husband's love to her sister, and she expected she should be better esteemed if she bore him children. So she entreated Yahweh perpetually. And when she had borne a son, and her husband was on that account better reconciled to her, she named her son Reuben, because Yahweh had mercy upon her in giving her a son. For that is the signification of this name. After some time she bore 3 more sons, Simeon, which name signifies that Yahweh had hearkened to her prayer. Then she bore Levi, the confirmer of their friendship. After them she bore Judah. What did I just say? Judah, which denotes thanksgiving. But Rachel, fearing that the fruitfulness of her sister should make herself enjoy a lesser share of Jacob, Yaakov's affections, put to bed to him her handmaid Bilhah, who bore Jacob. Yaakov had Dan, who was going to be accursed, remember? One may interpret that name into the Greek tongue a divine judgment, see? And after him Nephthalim, or Naphtali, as it were, unconquerable in stratagems. Since Rachel tried to conquer the fruitfulness of her sister by the stratagem, accordingly, Leah took the same method and used a counter-stratagem to that of her sister, for she put to bed to him her own handmaid. Jacob therefore had by Zilpah a son, whose name was Gad, which may be interpreted fortune, and after him Asher, which may be called a happy man, because he added glory to Leah. Now Reuben, the eldest son of Leah, brought apples of mandrakes to his mother. When Rachel saw them, she desired that she would give her the apples, for she longed to eat them. But when she refused and directed her to be content that she had deprived her of the benevolence she ought to have had from her husband, Rachel, in order to mitigate her sister's anger, said she would yield her husband to her, and he should lie with her that evening. She accepted of the favor, and Jacob slept with Leah by the favor of Rachel. She bore then these sons: Issachar, denoting one born by hire, and Zebulun, one born as a pledge of benevolence towards her, and a daughter, Dinah. After some time, Rachel had a son named Joseph, which signified there should be another added to him. That's the end of section 8. All right, Salake. Let's continue, though. All right, section 9 is kind of short, and it reads, Now Jacob fed the flocks of Laban, his father-in-law, all this time, being 20 years, after which he desired leave of his father-in-law to take his wives and go home. But when his father-in-law would not give him leave, he contrived to do it secretly. He tried to discern, therefore, the disposition of his wives, what they thought of this journey, when they appeared glad, and approved of it. Rachel took along with her the images of the gods which according to their laws they used to worship in their own country, and ran away together with her sister. The children also of them both, and the handmaids, and what possessions they had, went along with them. Jacob also drove away half the cattle without letting Laban know of it beforehand. But the reason why Rachel took of the images of the gods, although Jacob had taught her to despise such worship of those gods, was that in case they were pursued and taken by her father, she might have recourse to these images in order to obtain his pardon. Now they're just telling you that, okay, that's true. Okay, that's the end of section 9. But let's also tell you this too. Let's go into some detail. All right, so those images, right, those idols were also they were talismans. Okay, like a talisman, like a charm, a talisman. So what these pagans would do, they would use these talismans in their idol worship, and they would burn incense and burn strange fires and create potions, and they would use these talismans to be able to see through the spirits where people were. And they knew that, and they didn't want to be chased. And it said that in the Apocrypha. We read that in the Apocrypha. And they knew that he would find them and know what they did. And so Rachel didn't take all the talismans. She took the main ones, but he had others that he had hidden. And that's how he eventually went to those talismans and found out what was going on, right? And found out that he ran. And that's how he found out where his position was, and he found him, right? But when he found him, what happened? We're going to read about it, most likely. But guess what? I'm not reading ahead. I've never read Josephus, but I'm telling you what happened in the Apocrypha. All right? So let's continue. Section 10, let's continue. But Laban, after one day's time being acquainted with Jacob, and his daughter's departure, was much troubled and pursued after them, leading a band of men with them, and on the 7th day overtook them. See, how did he find them? He was using other talisman, that's what I was saying. And found them resting on a certain hill. And then indeed he did not meddle with them, for it was eventide. But Yahweh stood by him in a dream, and warned him to receive his son-in-law and his daughters in a peaceable manner, and not to venture upon anything rashly or in wrath to them, but to make a league with Yaakov. And he told him that if he despised their small number, attacked them in a hostile manner, he would assist them. When Laban had been thus forewarned by Yahweh, he called Yaakov to him the next day, in order to make a treaty with him, and showed him what dream he had. In dependence thereupon, he came confidently to him, and began to accuse him, alleging that he had provided for him when he was poor, and in want of all things, and had given him plenty of all things which he had. For he said, I have joined my daughters to you in marriage, and suppose that your kindness to me be greater than before. But you have had no regard to either your mother's relation to me, nor to the affinity now newly contracted between us, nor to those wives whom you have married, nor to those children of whom I am the grandfather. You have treated me as an enemy, by driving away my cattle, and by persuading my daughters to run away from their father, and by carrying home those sacred parental images which were worshipped by my forefathers, and have been honored with the like worship which they paid them by myself. In short, you have done this while you are my kinsman and my sister's son and the husband of my daughters, and were hospitably treated by me and did eat at my table. When Laban had said this, Jacob made his defense, that Laban was not the only person in whom Yahweh had implanted the love of his native country, but that he had made it natural to all men, and that therefore it was but reasonable that after so long a time Yaakov should go back to it. But as to the theft of which you accuse me, if any other person were the arbitrator, you would be found in the wrong. For instead of those thanks I ought to have had from you for both keeping your cattle and increasing them, how is it that you are unjustly angry at me because I have taken and have with me a small portion of them? But then, as to your daughters, take notice that it is not through any evil practices of mine that they follow me in my return home, but from that just affection which wives naturally have for their husbands. They follow therefore not so properly myself as their own children. And only thus far his apology was made in order to clear himself of having acted unjustly, to which he added his own complaint and accusation of Laban, saying, While I was your sister's son, and you had given me your daughters in marriage, you have worn me out with your harsh commands, and detained me 20 years under them. That indeed, which was required in order to my marrying your daughters, hard as it was, I own to have been tolerable. But as to those that were put upon me after those marriages, they were worse, and such indeed as an enemy would have avoided. For certainly Laban had used Jacob very ill. For when he saw that Yahweh was assisting to Jacob, and all that he desired, he promised him that of the young cattle which should be born, he should have sometimes what was of the white color, and sometimes what should be of the black color. But when those that came to Yaakov's share, proved numerous, he did not keep his faith with him, but said he would give them to him the next year, because of his envying him the multitude of his possessions. He promised him as before, because he thought such as an increase was not to be expected. But when it appeared to be fact, he deceived him. That's the end of section 10. See? So he was not a good man, and he deserved what he got. Section 11. But then, as to the sacred images, he directed him to search for them. And when Laban accepted the offer, Rachel, being informed of it, put those images into the camel's saddle on which he rode, and sat upon it, and said that her natural bleeding hindered her rising up. So Laban left off searching any further, not supposing that his daughter in such circumstances would approach to those images. So he made a league with Yaakov, and bound it by oaths, that he would not bear him any malice on account of what had happened. And Yaakov made the like league, and promised to love Laban's daughters. And these leagues they confirmed with oaths also, which they made upon certain mountains, whereon they erected a pillar in the form of an altar, thus that the hill is called Gilead. And from there they called it the land of Gilead at this day. Now when they had feasted after the making of the league, Laban returned home. Now you see that? Like when Rachel sat upon it and said she was in a menstrual bleed and she couldn't get up, they knew that in their culture they could not force her to get up. That would be making her unclean, right? Anything she sat upon, and she sat upon the idols, so they could never find them. See, that was clever on her part, right? Deceitful, but clever. But see what I'm saying? It was all still Yahweh's will. Now what are we saying? Huh? All right. Sometimes Yahweh's will is not what you think would be by the book, right? But hey, it's his will, right? Why did Isaac, both of them go into strange countries and both deceive and say that their wives were their sisters, right? Both of them did it. Son and father, they both did it. Let's read these notes here at the end of chapter 19. We got a couple notes, all right? But I was just saying, just throwing out some points there. Notes. Point 1. By this deprivation of the kingdom that was to be given Esau of Yahweh, as the firstborn, it appears that Josephus thought that a kingdom to be derived from Yahweh was due to him, from whom Isaac should bless as his firstborn, which I take to be that kingdom which was expected under the Messiah, who therefore was to be born of the posterity whom Isaac should so bless. Jacob, therefore, by obtaining this blessing of the firstborn, became the genuine heir of that kingdom in opposition to Esau. That's the end of point 1. Point 2 reads, here we have the difference between slaves for life and servants, such as we now hire for a time agreed upon on both sides and dismiss again after the time contracted for is over, which are no slaves but free men and free women. Accordingly, when the apostolical constitutions forbid a clergyman to marry perpetual servants or slaves, it is meant only for the former sort, as we learn elsewhere from the same constitution, Salake. But concerning these 12 sons of Jacob, the reasons of their several names and the times of their several births in the intervals here assigned, their several excellent characters, their several faults of repentance, the several incidents of their lives, with the several prophecies at their deaths. See the testaments of these 12 patriarchs, still preserved at large, and the authentic recitings, part 1, pages 294 through 443. That's the end of point number 2. Salake. Point number 3. I formally explain these mandrakes as we, with the Septuagint and Josephus, render the Hebrew word dudaim of the Syrian maux, which Ludofus, authentic, part 1, page 420, but have since seen such a very probable account in the miss of my learned friend, Mr. Samuel Barker, of what we still call mandrakes, right? Mandrakes are very psychedelic plants. If you guys don't know, mandrakes can be used for fruit, but also the roots of mandrakes can send you into a trip that's different than MDMA or ecstasy or anything. Like, mandrakes can be used in very medicinal ways, or they can send you into talking to what you would imagine to be angels, probably. But anyway, let's read this. And their description by the ancient naturalists and physicians, as inclines me to think these are mentioned, were really mandrakes and no other. Mandrakes are, mandrake. Look up mandrakes. I want you to go, guys, go. There's a reason why the mandrake flower and the mandrake root is like the flag symbol of the tribe of Reuben, right? Because that's where those mandrakes were. All right, so check this out. Mandrakes supposedly have a root that resembles the shape of a human body, all right? And there's been rumors that trying to pull mandrakes out the ground can result in them making sounds that almost sound like the screaming of humans. And so they had weird techniques by strapping them to dogs and having them pulled out the ground. Just check out mandrakes and look at the medicinal qualities of mandrakes and realize why mandrakes are so important here. Because mandrakes not just did things for fruit, but they did things for the psyche and also for health and medical. All right, so check that out. But anyway, that's the end of the points, and we're going to finish up this read, all right? But yeah, just fun facts, fun facts. But anyway, all praises to the Most High. Thanks for being with me on this road trip. Sorry for some of the hiccups here, little bumps and stuff, just trying to squeeze one in because I had to go to work tomorrow, but I still wanted to get one in tonight, Thank you, Kingdom Builders, road trippers, for being with me. Salake, the fire ran out, it is what it is. But thank you for being here. And until we meet again, please be safe up and down the roads to and fro as you travel. Please, Mishpakai, all right? You already know the drill. It's always all praises to the Most High Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai. And I can't wait to see you, each one of y'all again, man. All praises to the Most High. See you soon.